As I said in the introduction video to the Lore of Tower of God episode 0, the non-canon lore that SIU posted on its blog should be taken with a pinch of salt because since it's not canon, he can choose to modify it, delete it, or contradict it if he wants. Especially since a good part of these informations were written in the very first years of Tower of God's publication, and that they were only intended for a handful of Korean fans, at the time when Tower of God was very far from its current success. So this video will talk about the non-canon lore which is no longer valid today. Please note that I will only talk about the content that is invalid now after 500 chapters, so this list can grow later, and it does not contain the rumors category of the non-canon lore, like for example the fact that the 135th floor is inaccessible because of the aggressiveness of the administrator of the 135th floor, because even if we know that this information is false, the very existence of this information in the Tower of God universe is most probably true, because these are rumors that the inhabitants pass on to each other. They can be the result of a manipulation, a propaganda, the disclosure of false information, etc. So to summarize, an information can be false and exist in the universe of Tower of God. That's why I'm really only going to talk about the information that is sure to be obsolete. So anyway, hi, this is Lillian, and today we're going to meet again for episode 18 of the Tower of God lore videos, and we're going to talk about the non-canon lore that has become obsolete. We were introduced with Season 3 to Fug Slayer number 7, Baelod Yama, but the character sheet that SIU had written about him back in June 2013 described to us a rather different character and background. It said this: Baelod Yama, also known as the King of Bay Road, occupies the 7th seat of the Fug Slayers. It is said that Bay Road is the name of a secret place hidden in the tower. It is a place where special fighters called pitbulls fight. One of the features of Bay Road is the length of the arena. The pitbulls run around the arena from both sides and fight to the death. It is said that if you try to escape, a bed of blades awaits you at the end. And because the shape of this arena resembles a road, it was named Bay Road, the road where pitbulls bark. This part is actually kind of the prototype of what we currently know as the cage, only a little more hardcore though. The sheet goes on to say, the process in which these pitbulls are created is very interesting. They are born through blood fusion, a technique that is forbidden in the tower. It is a process in which something special from a family with great power is taken, and mixed with a baby while it is still an embryo, in order to give it said power. It's kind of like genetic modification in a nutshell. Few people know how to perform blood fusion because its practice is absolutely forbidden in the tower. Those who knew this technique have mostly been murdered or disappeared. This part of the lore is still more or less canon in fact, but it only concerns the 3 mad dogs, that is to say Varagav, Bjulsa Elliot and the third who is still unknown, because we know that the other members of the canine race get their power through doom. Moreover, this blood fusion technique looks very similar to the one that seems to be used to create the princesses of Jahad, the difference being that they get the blood of Jahad during their life and not at the embryo stage. Then we come to the part especially dedicated to Yama, which is completely false. Most embryos can't handle the side effects and will die from it, but those that survive are bred to fight as pit bulls to entertain the spectators coming to observe the fights. Baelod Yama was one of these pit bulls, and it is said that he was the strongest pit bull of all time. He was nicknamed the God of Death because of this. Later he killed his own breeder and became the only pit bull to escape from Bay Road, and then climbed the tower. Although the details are unknown, rumors say that Fugslayer Imort was involved. After becoming Ranker, Yama returned to Bay Road, backed by the power of the Fug, and killed the former owner of Bay Road to gain control. He then became the king of the Pitibulls as well as a slayer of the Fug, hinting that control of Bay Road was a requirement for becoming a slayer. Currently he uses the huge income of Bay Road to build an adult entertainment place, Yuhung Shizol in Korean, which is a form of entertainment including alcohol, drugs and sex, in order to expand his influence and power. However, he has never shown his face since he became Slayer. Then there is a piece of information given about the Arie family that is false. It is the fact that there is only one princess of Jahad in the Arie family, even among the branches of the family, and that this is due, according to the rumors, to a curse of Arie Horn Jahad, the very first princess of Jahad of the tower. This information is false since the arc of the name Hunt Station, because we know that in addition to Arie Horn, who disappeared, and Arie Hagiferioni, the princess holder of the Red October, and being 36th in the RAO ranking, there is another princess of Jahad, Arie Rose. There is a part of the lore that is no longer used by SIU that is not necessarily obsolete, but it is no longer of interest anyway. It's a bit of an useless part anyway. It's the ranks of the regulars and rankers, as well as the stat cards. There is a chart that exists on the wiki that has been picked up sometimes, but that chart is actually fan speculation and therefore not really valuable. I'm posting it here. This table was actually based on stats cards. Cards that SIU created at the beginning of Tower of God, and that he deleted since then. There are 18 of them in total, in 2 different formats, and they are very complete, especially the second version where you can see a note for each position, the list of special positions, contracts, physical reinforcement capacities, the control of Shinsu with even the number of Bang, Myun and Su, the mastery of weapon, tactics, knowledge, will, charisma, reliability, the level of equipment in general, and then the detail with the pocket, inventory, lighthouses, wands, etc., as well as some graphs and a general note, and a note on potential. SIU probably stopped making these cards because of their complexity and the fact that the characters were constantly changing anyway. Still, if these stat cards are discontinued, it's hard to say if they are obsolete now, since they describe the stats of the characters as SIU saw them at the time he made them, but in any case, it's safe to say that they're of little use now. Now we're going to talk about a case more anecdotal than anything else. It's about the first versions of Tower of God. There are actually 2 previous versions of Tower of God, one in black and white, which I don't really know where it comes from, but it seems that it was the first version of Toji when SIU was really amateur. It shows the scene where Hedon welcomes Bam in the tower after showing him a monster to beat for the first floor test, this monster replacing the white armored eel. I have no idea where these screenshots come from, and neither does Electrica, and we don't really know when SIU drew them exactly. Then there's the second version that SIU published on a site called Best Challenge, still amateur, and that was in color this time. The story seems to be almost the same as the one we know, even if there were some differences, and besides we can see SIU talking about it several times in the first notes at the end of the chapter. On the other hand, there is a line of dialogue that SIU changed in the version we know. It is a sentence of Hedon when Bam goes up to the second floor. In the Best Challenge version, Hedon says, "I welcome you to the tower, you, the boy who was born the night this tower cried." SIU later said that this dialogue was foreshadowing, but removed it so as not to create too much confusion at first. The Best Challenge version stopped in the middle of Season 1 after SIU was offered to turn professional at Nava Webtoon, where he would start from the beginning by making the version we all know now. The 2 first versions, the black and white one and the Best Challenge one, are both untraceable nowadays, and only some screenshots remain to testify it. Finally, there is another part of the lore that is in the same case. It is all about Talsa Uza's story, of course. Almost all of this content has been deleted from the internet, and only the inscription Tales Uza story at the beginning of the chapters of Tower of God is there to testify of its existence, but we'll talk about all this in detail soon. That's it for this short video. It's true that there wasn't much to say in the end, and it's good in a way. It shows that despite the fact that SIU does what it wants with the non-canon lore, it still remains coherent most of the time, and that's good for me too. It makes me work less. Anyway, I hope you liked this short video. You can like, share, etc. And we'll meet again for the next and almost last video about the Tower of God lore, the one where I'll put all the stuff I couldn't put in the other videos, that is to say the one about the anecdotes.